Hi, this is Dr. Janson, and something very interesting. I'm reading about this research project that came out recently, and it's all over the news. It's about walking and heart health, which I thought was so perfect because Valentine's Day is coming up. So let's talk about your heart. I think that's really important. These research projects seem to keep coming out, and I think it's because there was a doctor in Texas, and his name is Dr. James Levine, and he coined this term, sitting is the new smoking. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's just so big in the news lately, and he's not even given credit for saying it, too. It's so widely known now. But what's interesting now, you see all these scientists coming up with research to prove it. So recently published was a research project from Dr. Keith Diaz, and he's from Irvington Medical Center, which is part of Columbia University in New York. And it was published by the American College of Sports Medicine. So this just came out. It's really a very interesting piece. The study compared 5 groups of people, and they had each group doing different things. So one group sat for 60 minutes without getting up. Another group got up and walked for 1 minute per hour, and so on. And the fifth group, the last group, the one that walked the most, was 5 minutes every half hour. So they compared 3 things they measured. So they measured, 1 was the blood sugar, 2 was the blood pressure, and 3 was they measured the mood of the patient, which was sort of a happiness scale. Sad to happy, and tired to feeling active. So kind of a happiness scale too. They measured that. So the results were very dramatic. So for example, one thing they did was they gave all the subjects a very large meal, and then they, sat, or in the first group just sat, or they walked, according to how much they were supposed to walk. So the group that walked 2 5-minute intervals in the hour showed a 60% lower blood sugar spike than the group that just sat. 60% lower, that's amazing. It's more than half, or less than half as much blood sugar spike as the sitting group. That's really a dramatic difference. And there was a lot of other things that they were doing in the test. They just kept showing it over and over again. It was a really great study. A lot of people done over a long period of time. And Dr. Diaz's conclusion, I'll read it right from the article. He says, walking for 5 minutes every half an hour will lower your risk of heart disease. So I thought that was really interesting because, they were measuring 3 things, which was blood sugar, blood pressure, and mood. So, and then the conclusion is your heart will be healthier if these things are improved. So I was thinking, what's the connection between them? So I would like to explain that to you, because I think if you know the connection, you're more likely to, follow Dr. Diaz's advice. So I wanted to explain it a little bit to you. And as you know, walking is, my passion, to try to get patients to walk. The name of my clinic is Walk Healthy, which means, in order to be healthy, you should walk. So that's why I'd like to explain it to you. So when you walk, one thing that happens is endothelial cells, and those are the cells that line your arteries, are very good at detecting blood flow. And there's an enzyme that's sort of glued onto the outside of endothelial cells, and that enzyme is called lipoprotein lipase. And you've heard of lipoproteins because you know HDL, LDL, those are that's cholesterol, right? So it stands for low density lipoprotein, high density lipoprotein. So that's what we're talking about, lipoprotein, or fat, or in your bloodstream. So this enzyme, what it does is it degrades triglycerides down to 2 fatty acids and a glycerol molecule. So it degrades, or breaks down cholesterol in your bloodstream and turns it into free fatty acid. And the fatty acid can be burned by your heart. And if you remember from high school, sugar gives you less energy than fat. I think it's something like, 3 calories for a gram of sugar compared to 9 calories for a gram of fat. So fat gives you 3 times as much energy as the same amount of sugar. So if your heart can burn fatty acids, then your heart is more powerful. And what will happen is your heart rate can go down. Your resting heart rate is lower when the heart is using fatty acids as its fuel. So if the heart rate were lower, then what would happen is the force on arteries goes down because you have a nice even in and out motion of blood through the arteries. And that's why if your heart is running on free fatty acids, your blood pressure goes down because the heart is more powerful with the better fuel source. And so going back to conclude what I just said, so your endothelial cells will increase the activity of lipoprotein lipase, breaking up those the cholesterol molecules down into a useful fuel for your heart. So your heart runs better on a better energy source. So that's one thing that happens. So that's why your blood pressure goes down. Another thing that happens when you're walking is that, and this is so interesting, it's just amazing. So your cerebellum, when you're walking around, your cerebellum is active. So it's detecting, the head movement and stuff when you're moving around, versus sitting, your head's not really moving, your body's not moving. So when your cerebellum detects activity, it will promote the production of something called brain-derived, it's coming from your brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And that's a enzyme that's going to float through your bloodstream, and it does many things. It makes nerves work better. It will increase your ability to remember, to focus, and to learn. You can learn better when brain-derived neurotrophic factors go up. And they go up when you're moving around. So that makes sense because you gotta, you're moving around, you better figure out what you're doing. Go find some berries, go get some food, forage. You're walking around, puttering around. So your brain works better because of this brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And here's something really interesting. That's an antagonist to cortisol. So, you have different antagonistic things that control your behavior. Ghrelin versus leptin, for example, which is the hunger hormone versus the I'm full hormone. And so brain-derived neurotrophic factor is an antagonist to cortisol. And I think you know what cortisol is. It's your emergency hormone or your stress hormone. Cortisol means, levels go up when the house is on fire, the lion is chasing you. There's some kind of an emergency going on. So what happens when cortisol levels are high is your liver starts pumping out blood sugar. So your blood sugar goes way up. Even if you're not eating, cortisol will cause high blood sugar. And cortisol will make your heart work harder. It starts beating fast. And fast heartbeat, remember what I said about how if the heart is running on fat, it'll beat, it has more constant steady beat. But cortisol will make your heart rate faster. So when your cortisol levels are high, your heart rate is high. And when your heart rate is high, your blood pressure goes up. So cortisol is not heart friendly. Your heart is beating faster, and it's like a whip on your heart. Get going, let's get away from the lion. So high cortisol levels are not healthy for your heart, and brain-derived neurotrophic factors, if that factor goes up, cortisol being an antagonist will go down, like on a seesaw. So, one goes up, if one is up, the other one is down, So, so you want your brain-derived neurotrophic factor to be as high as possible. And it goes up when you walk around. So that's the connection between a healthy heart and walking as far as your brain is concerned. So those are the two things that I'd like you to think about. Increasing your lipoprotein lipase through walking, which, it lowers your cholesterol, gives your heart power, lowers your blood pressure. And the other one is to think about brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which lowers your cortisol level, and cortisol is bad for your heart. So lowering your cortisol levels is very good for your heart. So I hope you found that interesting, because I think if you understand why walking is good for the heart, and you understand it through biochemistry, and you can look it up on your phone. It's really a fascinating subject. I think that if you understand that you would understand why walking is so healthy and follow Dr. Diaz's advice. So he says, don't sit for more than 25 minutes at a pop. Every 25 minutes, you're going to get up and putter around and walk for 5 minutes, before you sit down again, for at least 5 minutes. And that's the way to have a healthy heart. So happy Valentine's Day to you. And I hope you follow Dr. Diaz's advice. Maybe in another video we could go and meet him. Wouldn't that be fun? Wow, this guy's like, studying stuff that's right up my alley. I really like it. So maybe we could figure that out. Well, look forward to seeing you in another video. If you want to subscribe, that would be great. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. But thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next video.